Mr. Speaker, these are the reasons why we shall win a fourth general election. We have been down in the polls before when we've taken difficult decisions. The essence of a good government is that it is prepared to take difficult decisions to get the long-term prosperity. That is what we have achieved, and that is why we shall win handsomely when a general election comes. Now, I was talking about the Labour Party wanting to renationalise privatised industry. 4 of the industries we have privatised are now in the top 10 British businesses. And at the very bottom of the list of 1,000 British businesses lie 4 nationalised industries. Labour's industries consume the wealth others create and give nothing back. Mr. Speaker, it is because individuals and families now have more power and more choice that they have more opportunities to succeed, more jobs, to 1 million more than in 1979, better rewards for hard work, income tax down from 33 pence in the pound to 25 pence in the pound, and no surcharge on savings income either. Living standards up by 1/3, more new businesses, 400,000 new businesses since 1979, over 700 every week, and a better future for our children. Thanks to their hard work, success and enterprise, our people are better off than ever before. Indeed, the average pensioner, just listen, you might hear something really which you didn't know. Listen, the average pensioner now has twice as much to hand on to his children as 11 years ago. Really are thinking about the future. This massive rise in our living standards reflects the extraordinary transformation of the private sector. I give way to the honourable gentleman.
There is no doubt that the Prime Minister has in many ways achieved substantial success for the economy. There is one statistic that I understand is not, however, challengeable, and that is that over her 11 years, the gap between the richest 10% and the poorest 10% in this country has widened substantially.
That's right.
How can she say at the end of her chapter of British politics that she can justify many people in a constituency such as mine being relatively much poorer off, much less well housed, and much less well provided than it was in 1979? Surely she accepts that is not a record that she or any Prime Minister can be proud of.
Mr. Speaker, all levels of income are better off than they were in 1979. But what the honourable member is saying is that he would rather the poor were poorer, provided the rich were less rich. That way you will never create the wealth for better social services as we have. And what a policy! Yes, he would rather have the poor poorer, provided the rich were less rich. That is the Liberal policy. Yes, it came out, he didn't intend it to, but he did. Now,
Order.
it is the extraordinary transformation of the private sector which has created the wealth for better social services, for better pensions, to enable pensioners to have twice as much as they did 10 years ago to leave to their children. No longer the sick man of Europe, our output and investment grew faster over the 80s than any of our major competitors. If you'll be a little bit patient, let me get on a little bit further. No longer a doubtful prospect when American and Japanese companies invest in Europe. We are their first choice. Britain is no longer an overmanned, inefficient, backward manufacturing sector, but modern, dynamic industries. The right honourable gentleman referred to the level of inflation. Yes, in 1987 and 1988, the economy did expand too fast. There was too much borrowing, and inflation rose. And that's why we had to take the tough, unpopular measures to bring the growth of money supply within target. Inflation has now peaked and will soon be coming down. Inevitably, the economy has slowed, but we firmly expect growth to resume next year. For the fundamentals are right. Our industry is now enterprising. It has been modernized and restructured. In sector after sector, it is our companies which lead the world. In pharmaceuticals, in telecommunications, and in aerospace. Our companies have the freedom and talent to succeed and the will to compete. I give way to the honourable gentleman.
I'm extremely grateful. The Prime Minister is aware that I detest every single one of her domestic policies and have never hid that. But it's always a greater pleasure to tackle a political heavyweight opponent than a lightweight leader of the opposition who is afraid to explain why, after a lifetime of campaigning to get rid of nuclear weapons, is going to plant 3 tridents in my country. But can I take the Prime Minister back? Take the Prime Minister back to the question of the poor getting poorer. Doesn't she realise, even at this point, which is 5 minutes after midnight for her, because there was a transfer of resources from the poor to the wealthy, that's why the poll tax was unacceptable, and it's because of the poll tax she has fallen.
And I think that the honourable gentleman knows that I have the same contempt for his socialist policies as the people of East Europe who have experienced it have it for theirs. I think I must have hit the right nail on the head when I pointed out that the logic of those policies are they'd rather have the poor poorer. Once they start to talk about the gap, they'd rather the gap was that. Down here. That. Not that. But that. So long as the gap is smaller, they'd rather have the poor poorer. You do not create wealth and opportunity that way. You do not create a property-owning democracy that way. Can I get back to the industry, to the industrial policy from which Scotland has benefited so much and for which it could never have benefited under the government he used to support and under the political policy he espouses now? Yes, our companies have the freedom and talent to succeed and the will to compete. And compete we must. Our competitors won't be taking a break. There must be no hankering after soft options and no going back to the disastrous economic policies of Labour governments. No amount of distance lends enchantment to the lean years of Labour, which gave us the lowest growth rate in Europe, the highest strike record, and for the average family, virtually no increase in take-home pay.